We survived in community. We've talked about it before. We will talk about it again. It is hugely, hugely important to find your tribe, to find your people, to feel like genuinely feel like you're supported. Welcome to Exploring the Edges. Let's get into it. Hi, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to week 11 of The Artist Way and to Exploring the Edges. We're so happy you're here today.
We have so much to talk this week, friends. So we're just going to get started. Week 11, we also did not spend as much time with as we could have, but we are very deep in the energies of this week, and it's hitting at just the right time. And so we'll just do a quick overview of sort of the main topics from week 11, and then we're going to start to tie them into what's been happening in our lives. And then we're really going to try to offer some practical advice and practical knowledge in order to move you through some of these energies.
Yeah, if you're sitting in the same thing, you are not alone, friends. We're in it and we're in it deep.
Yes, it's been a big week. So
Hmm.
the first piece of the artist way for this week, week 11, talks about how as an artist, you may not have a and she gives a couple of examples. Like as an artist, I might not have a 9 to 5 job, but I might. I might find that the structure of this 9 to 5 schedule really supports me, really creates a structure for me to explore my creativity as an artist, and it might not. And in the same respect, as an artist, I might not have a beautiful modern condo. I might not have a house on the hill. I might not have a new car, I might not have an old car because my artist needs me to feel safe and secure and fancy in a car. And so this is really about really tuning into authentically what you need in order to support yourself as an artist.
And it reaches beyond being an artist, as always.
Yeah, of course. And so Jen and I are sitting in this energy now where we are really feeling this field open up, this field of potential. And because we're sitting in this energy, this creation energy, creativity, starting to lend our experience in community, we're finding that the field is wide open. It almost feels like we can just pull in and choose whatever we need in order to support us in our work and our mission. And that field of possibilities is a bit challenging, honestly, because then you have to sit back in this energy like, all right, what is it that I really do need? Do I need less structure? Do I need more structure? Do I need more support? Do I need more movement? Do I need more community? What do I need? And so we're still talking about this same kind of tuning into what you authentically need in this chapter and embracing authenticity.
Yeah, and really tuning in. And sometimes what you need is just to make a decision because
Oh,
anything
yeah.
you decide is going to meet your needs. And that's tough when you have like not vanilla or chocolate to choose from, but every single ice cream flavor and they're all delicious.
Yeah, it's so good that you spoke into that because we've been feeling this, and I wouldn't call it like analysis paralysis,
Mhm.
but it is a bit of that when you feel like you have so many decisions. And I also think it's a bit of relying too heavily on like getting the signiest sign, whereas, especially as intuitives or, you feel like you have this extra sense and you're like, okay, like this is great, I'm going to use this extra sense to really guide me, and whatever that sense is, I'm going to use it to guide me. And then what if the answer is that whatever calls your highest joy, like one of the things that Jen, you and I have sat in is that when we sit down together, we share our energy, we drop in, we call in our teams, our spiritual guides and our teams, we imagine the dream. And sometimes it elicits such a powerful emotional response that we both cry the whole time
Yeah.
because we can feel the joy, we can feel the fulfillment, we can feel the generosity and the gratitude, the abundance, we can feel the healing, we can feel the reciprocity, we can feel the connection. And so it is from this place that you really have to just start to accept that feeling that you feel when you think of it, that when you are moved to tears because it feels so good in your body. Like you do not need a different sign.
Yeah.
Like that's the sign. You don't need a different sign. There's no sign of your sign. Like this is the sign. And starting to trust that as you move in that direction, even the pieces that feel impossible, they don't feel available. How on earth am I going to do this? This is it.
All that comes
This
up because we are programmed for it to all come up, and we are surrounded by people who are also programmed for it to all come up. So you start
yeah.
talking to people in your life that that's your dream. Where's the money coming from? How are you going to do this? Where's the energy going to come from? Don't you need a team? And you're like, well, it'll come. You know,
Yeah.
like one time I found $10 on the ground, so I just got to do that a few more thousand times and we're good, you
That's
know?
it. This is all. This is it. But, and we've talked about it before that, this is the nature of the path. Once you start walking, then it appears. And so it is about, like taking those next steps. And that's, Jen, that's exactly the energy that we're sitting in. And so in this energy of uncertainty and trust and deep radical trust, I think we have sort of lost some of our creative practices because, a couple of weeks ago, we were like really tuned in. We were both like deep in our artistic work. We were flowing channels of creativity. We were both putting out a lot of work. We were both creating a lot. And I think as soon as this other energy crept in, like it just was like a clamp on that creativity. And so this week in the week of 11, I've been trying to feel into this thing that she talks about, which is like you create whether it's good or not. You create whether it's going to be able to be monetized. You create whether it's going to be successful. Like you keep creating. And I think that this has been really difficult to anchor in, especially because I feel so not free in my energetic body. I'm working to like neutralize a lot of the stuff in my environment. Like, what is my nervous system doing? Like, the body has its own mechanisms. And so this also brings us to this. She's talking about binging again this week in week 11, which is interesting because we talked about it last week. And
Mhm.
it is something that I've noticed I'm like coming back to a bit just because, the cupcakes are on the counter and I'm a bit stressed about starting the rest of my life in a different way.
Yeah, sure. Even me, Jack, because as you know, my binge of choice is not cupcakes, it's chips. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm savory and you're sweet. And I don't have those right now. So I'm like, oh, I'll just have a piece of chocolate. I'll just have another piece of chocolate because I have chocolate in the fridge. I'll have another piece of chocolate and I'm sitting in it too. And it's not because the stress is from things that aren't exciting or aren't lighting us up. But I think when you start really feeling the dream, it can be overwhelming. It can feel overwhelming and stress is stress. Your body kind of reacts in the same way. Like, oh my God, this is what I need to do now? Okay, well, how am I going to make this happen? And there are so many outside factors that you just have zero control over. Zero.
Mm,
None. There's lots of people that can just decide that they're having a bad day and change, like change the entire course that you thought you were going. So there's a lot of flexibility that needs to still be there. And it's
mm,
a lot. It's just a lot. And good or bad, change is change, you know?
yeah.
Your
Yeah, and I think
identity, everything is changing.
yeah, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that the bigger your dream is, the more of that is going to come into the field, right? Because we see the end, Jen. We
Mhm.
can see the end of like maybe 10 years of work, That's the truth.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to start to walk in a direction where 10 years worth of abundance and opportunities and connections and divine timing and divine alignment. It's 10 years worth of that stuff is sitting in between what we see right now around us and what we hope we know we'll see in 10 years.
Yeah, and it's having the strength, like when you need to lose 450 pounds to not be like, oh, I have this giant number ahead of me so that I can, be healthy. It's going, okay, well, what do I have to do today? Stand up for 10 seconds or, like whatever I need to do. And it's hard, like props to everybody making massive changes in their life in every
Mhm.
area because it is hard to scale back and be in the present. It's hard.
Yeah. I read today this thing about how what we feel, and I apologize that I cannot credit the creator. I usually try to like make notes and credit creators where I'm going to share these things, but they said that sometimes it's not anxiety that you feel when you're stepping into these big changes, it's anticipation,
Mm,
right? Like we can feel it. We can feel it in the field. We know that it's coming. We've already seen it. And because of the nature of nonlinear time, of the field of quantum possibility, it's anticipation. We know that it's coming. We can feel it in the field. And so maybe what we're experiencing is not really anxiety or analysis paralysis or fear of failure. Maybe we're just fucking excited and they feel similar in our bodies, you know?
mm.
And I think that we have so much less experience with that part, you know, like, right? Because we have so much less experience with this big excitement, you know? Like I think as children we were more connected to that, but as adults, like when is the last time that you were so fucking excited that you couldn't eat or sleep? You know? I think you and I had that experience right before we came together last year.
Yeah.
We were so fucking, there was so much, and we were like, I don't know what this is, but we can't eat or sleep, you know?
Yeah.
It was excitement. It was anticipation. It was like it was our spirit, our soul, our deep body wisdom, knowing that we were coming together,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
we already knew. We just like everything else, your brain gets involved and your brain goes,
Mhm.
yeah, but maybe not. Maybe you're gonna get to the bus station and it's gonna feel really weird. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing like right now in our bodies, and maybe for the people who are listening, you're sitting in something and your body already knows, and your brain
Mhm.
just gets involved and goes, well, what
Oh,
about
for
the money?
sure.
What about this? What about this?
Yeah,
But
your
like we
body already
already knew,
knows.
we knew, even before we planned a trip, we knew, it's just
Jen, we knew potentially before we even incarnated in
a
this
hundred percent.
in
Yeah.
this lifetime.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that deep soul wisdom fucking knows.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
I think that it is important also to acknowledge this part of chapter 11, even where we start to look at how our current level of success or our current level of comfort cuts us off from taking those next steps. And I think we can apply this even in our relationship, Jen, because we were so happy and comfortable. You
Hmm.
know, when we were together in Canada, we had beautiful routines. We felt very supported. Everything was like going well. We were feeling successful. And what we really needed to do was come apart so we could integrate these next pieces.
Yeah, because like a lot has already come up that needed to be released in order to step into the next thing, like release of like past life traumas and all this kind of stuff that I don't know that may have eventually come up, but I don't think would have come up as soon or as clearly and just, you know.
Right. Because we were in the comfort and safety of, our current level of success. And you can say whatever you want about success, but this is success, like we were really happy, we were well established, we were taking care of our bodies, we were challenged, we were creating art. Like it is success. And so if we thought that that was the greatest level of success that we could achieve, if we let this success, this model that was working, like a lot of times she talks about like artists who maybe you have a hit, right? You have a hit film and then there's demand for a sequel, right? Like authors, you write a book, like now you have to figure out how to make it into a whole series because there's demand for it. It's successful. People are interested in it. And so I think we've seen this even in our own lives as we look at some of the people around us in different fields, we can see where they maybe were having trouble stepping out of something that was working to create space to allow something even bigger, even more aligned, even more dynamic, more impactful, more aligned service, stepping out of what feels like it was successful and comfortable in order to make space for that to come in.
Yeah, and some are not, and some may not, and that's you can't control another person's journey, but it's scary, if you're cruising along and you feel like you are helping people and that that part of your path is aligned or was aligned, especially if it feels like it fed your soul, because that also changes what you need and your purpose changes as you grow. And I think it's hard because I think that there's like abandonment stuff that comes up. Like I'm helping all of these people, and if I step out to do this next thing for myself, then who's going to help them? So you have that, and you have also like I got all my bills paid. That's going really well for me. If I step out, then your own stuff comes up. Like what if it doesn't work? And I think it's really challenging, and I don't know that everybody is willing to take that step. And it's scary, and like there's no judgment there, but yeah, you see it, people who are immensely, immensely talented and tuned in and still doing the same formula as they were 15 years ago when you know that like they should have graduated from grade one and gone to university already, it's
Yeah. Yeah, in the chapter she talks about, I forget the specific type of artist, but he's booked like, 5 years in advance or something for a certain type of work. And she's like, I mean, can you even bring the same level of juice at that time? Like what if you're not really even aligned with that message anymore?
yeah,
And we know,
he stopped taking bookings that far in advance.
yeah, and we know that our greatest work comes when we are the most excited, and we're the most tapped in, when we're the clearest channel. And it is that excitement, that's the juice that brings in all of that flow for creativity, and you cannot replicate it when we know, as if you've ever created anything that feels like it's not just yours, right? You're co-creating with the universe, with God, with spirit. You're co-creating with your friend, like in the moment. Oh my God, it's so good. And you can't go back and try to like snap your fingers and be like, all right, let's do it again because I'm getting paid. Oh, let's do it again. Let's have the same level of juice because I need to pay my mortgage next month.
Doesn't work that
And
way.
no, it doesn't. And so I think even if it's just good to bring it into the field to like sort of talk about it. And I'm glad that she did because we've seen it in our lives.
Mhm.
And we might not have even, I think we did have a sense when we were separating that this was needed in order for our growth. But it's good to have this kind of language just in your field, in your mind. Like, it is it is something that challenges the authenticity of your creative path, your creative progress as
Mhm.
an artist, as a whatever you are, as a
Yeah,
whatever, however you're channeling this source, this spirit.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, just as human beings in whatever capacity. It's all a part of the journey, and I think sometimes you're more aware and sometimes you're less aware, but I think it's just always there all the time.
Yeah. And sort of before we move into like the last part of week 11, like how important it is to be supported.
Yeah, that was the quote out of the entire chapter that stood out the most. She said, I wrote it down even. I even made notes, which is pretty good. As an artist, I do not need to be rich, but be richly supported. And I feel like as a human, this is how we this is how we made it this far. We are not the strongest, we are not the fastest. Sure, you can read books like Born to Run and know that we have endurance, but this is not how we survive. We survived in community. We've talked about it before. We will talk about it again. It is hugely, hugely important to find your tribe, to find your people, to feel like genuinely feel like you're supported. Like you don't show up for a couple of days, somebody's checking on you, or your energy seems off and you have somebody in your corner checking on you. And it's really something that's lacking. And because we, again, and we've talked about it before, we're just like, it's in the programming to keep everybody separate. It's best for you to be by yourself. Look out for yourself. You have the best car, keeping up with the Joneses. Like, you don't know your neighbor. You just make sure that your grass is a little greener than yours. That's all you need. Really, that's all you need, Be rich. Don't worry about the guy down the street who can't feed his family today, as long as, you have your stuff. And it's drilled in. It's trademarked as the American dream. And And I think it's the same dream in any developing country, to this is part of the thing that's showing up in developing countries. It's not just that like the people in less developed places are healthier because they're not eating McDonald's. They're also hugely tied into community and supporting each other. And that I think it doesn't get talked about enough as part of like health, as part of wellness. It just doesn't get talked about enough because it's easy to be like, just don't eat McDonald's, but still make sure that you have like all of your other stuff taken care of and it's number one. And yeah, we need to be richly supported. We need to be richly supported.
Yeah, I do think that we could look at this, even just the small example in the framework of where you feel like you've been successful before and it sort of challenges the development. Because if you have kind of like a friend group around you and you feel like, oh, okay, like I have this friend group around me, I have friends, I have, social activities, I have events, and you don't reach for that deeper support, right? You don't reach for that deeper support. Like, am I co-creating with these people? Like am I aligned? Am
Yeah.
I heard? Can I feel like, these are deep relationships, deep, rich, supported relationships. Sometimes we're afraid to like let go of the people that are in our lives in order to make room. And this is the same as feeling like you have to write the same book. It's the same as feeling like you have to offer the same service model because it's successful. It's the same thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that this idea of hyper independence is huge in my field right now. It's something that I'm really struggling with. And so I know we're going to come back to this last piece of chapter 11, but if we could speak into this hyper dependence, because I do think it's a big part of the change that's needed in order for us to move back into communal environments.
Hmm.
And so I read this. I follow Shalana Ayana, who has founded Rising Woman,
Hmm.
and I follow her on Instagram. And she posted this thing this morning, which is just impeccable timing. And it's so beautiful to be supported in these ways. You talk about being richly supported. Like this woman has no idea that she's supporting me. She has no idea that she woke up this morning with this idea that she needs to talk about. She put it into, her format. She put it up on her page and it's hugely supported me today. And we're going to talk about it now. We've already discussed it, with each other in terms of how it's impacting our relationship. But she has no idea that she's supported me in this way. And I think that this is really, truly, it's one of the hardest parts of being a creator, I feel like, because you just do not know, you cannot know the ways that your work is supporting other people. And so if we only share the stuff that we think is successful, by the numbers, that's being monetized. We really are we're not even really seeing the whole picture of how our work is supporting our communities. And so this morning she posted this thing about ultra independence and she posted about a something that she called a dependency paradox, where I think we are taught to sort of be aware of codependency. And she says that couples who depend on each other more tend to actually feel safer when taking risks. And this is something that you and I are sitting in right now. And you've been so gentle and patient and kind in tending this wound that I have, and it's ultra independence. And we pick this up from childhood, we pick it up from past life trauma, we pick it up from our early relationships, we pick it up, in our friend groups, even as young adults, pick it up from all of our life experiences that showed us that it's safer to be able to take care of your own needs yourself and to not depend on anybody else.
Hmm.
And so I think it's interesting to feel into this, because I do think that in trauma work, or the work that we do as we're coming along on this path of learning, we do start to look into attachment research. Like, what's my attachment style? Oh, okay, I'm avoidant attachment. Oh, okay, I'm anxious. I'm anxiously, attached. I have this combination disorganized attachment. I do think that attachment helps us look at the ways that we may have found ourselves relating to other people, especially intimate partners, in the past in ways that are not safe.
Mhm.
And so I found just in my own journey and coming into this relationship with you, Jen, that there is a pivot that needs to happen as you're moving out of unsafe relationships and you're moving into safe relationships. Because I do think that there is a deeper part as we're moving into these deeper, safer relationships, more deep intimacy. It's being intimately connected with somebody as a partner that you're building a life with from non-attachment. And that's what makes it a safe relationship. But I do think that this questioning survives from the past ways that you used to relate, attach in relationships. And some of this questioning is healthy. Like some of it is healthy. Having the awareness about around codependency is healthy and asking yourself, like, what makes this different? What makes this different from ways that I've related in the past? But as I felt into the energy of this woman's post and her slide, I felt into this deeper energetic current. And this is important. This is important to speak into because when we create and when we share, and we've talked about this before, we are creating with intention, with energetic intention. What is the thing? And as I felt into this woman's post, I could read underneath the lines, I could read underneath the language. And underneath the language, I think the energy, how I received it was codependency as a term has this built in energetic signature of separation. And this is what I felt into because there are unhealthy forms of codependency, but it is also unhealthy to view codependency as a means to keep us separate from working with one another in community. Like, and this is something I've struggled with even in our relationship. Like, as I'm being so vulnerable, Jen, as I'm sharing myself intimately, as I'm talking about sharing labor and resources, as I'm talking about co-creating, as we've connected energetically in ways that maybe people never will. They won't be able to connect in that way in this lifetime. Like, is it codependency? And this question sits in the back of my mind. And sometimes I think it comes from this place of abandonment. It comes from this place of feeling like the only way for me to be safe is for me to be able to do it myself. And there's a reality that you keep bringing me back to, which is that you cannot build community dreams by yourself. And this is it is a paradox. And so it's really important to feel into this lone wolf thing, right? Because I think especially as women, we're all sitting in this right now, like we're all sitting in this. It's the part of receivership. It's the part of abundance. It's dismantling our contributions from capitalism. And so I just sort of wanted to speak into it because so as I work through my own issue around hyper independence, around this idea that I'm only safe if I can provide for myself. These are the ways that we are detaching from the ways that we can be deeply cared for, deep support, deeply provided for, not just by the earth, but by our relationships, not just our romantic relationships, our relationships in community. And so this is a really important piece of this puzzle, like we can talk about, I do a lot of money mindset coaching. I do a lot of abundance coaching. I'm doing a lot of manifestation about receiving. And you could be doing all of those things. And if at the end of the day, your nervous system only feels safe when you're providing for yourself, at the end of the day, if your own knowing is that I have to do this all by myself, where does that support come from? Like we're shutting ourselves off from the lifeblood that we need in order to be able to create these dreams.
Yeah. Oh, before we like stray too far, I just want to say like thank you for being so vulnerable because I really feel like it's going to help a lot of people. And I do not
Mm,
think that you're the only person sitting in this. And it's a big it's a big share to share with people that you're safe with, but it's massive to just share it on the internet, but it's so important. So I just
Mhm.
want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I do think it's in the field. You
Yeah,
know, like certainly I'm not the only one that's feeling into this. And I do think the other component of this challenge for me specifically is because of the gifts that I have. You know, like I'm empath. Um, like in the work that I've done as an energy healer, I'm able to move people's trauma and energy from them through my own body. And this is because I have this natural innate gift, you know, like I can step into a room and command the energy in it. You know, I can step into a situation that's, you know, full of anyway. I'm always mediating or processing the emotions around me. And so in the past, I think in past relationships, I was unknowingly overgiving and co-regulating. And I have a Neptune complex, you know, like I have this deep dream to, yeah, I'm Pisces rising, right? It's this call to merge into a collective consciousness, to merge into a relationship, to there's a lot of dissolving boundaries around where my energy ends and where the collective energy begins. So I do think that makes it even harder to have a real conversation around codependency because I think it's happening and I've tried to set boundaries around it, but it happens, it's part of my gift.
yeah.
But I think it's important to feel into this underlying energy of what the benefits of keeping us separate are, of, you know, keeping us from being well cared for in communities, from
Hmm.
keeping us sort of like dependent. It's wrapped up in this whole package of serving capitalism, of serving the patriarchy. And so, what is possible when we're deeply cared for in communities, when we are deeply nourished and cared for by the earth, when we're deeply nourished and cared for by our intimate relationships, like what happens? We're no longer dependent on all of the things that benefit someone else.
Hmm.
And we truly start to use our own capital, our own labor. We start to use it to build the things that serve us instead of serving someone else. And so, Jen, you and I are exploring ways now to start to try to identify ways that we can offer more practical support, you know, like a deeper level of support. And we don't know what that looks like, whether that's going to look like, you know, a private community or a subscription service or just putting out more free resources. And the piece of this practical advice, and maybe you can speak into it, you know, chapter 11 of The Artist Way really talked about the value of physical movement. You know, when you're processing all of these really deep, ingrained, energetic releases, alignments, upgrades, and that's physical movement.
Yeah, yeah, she spent most of the chapter honestly giving examples of movement as meditation, and how it really helped a lot of people and has helped a lot of people to problem solve, to come up with solutions, to kind of like set them up for success emotionally and mentally for the day. And even if it's just going for a walk in nature, I mean, I know that for a long time I really struggled with meditation, but I felt like if I went for a walk, I didn't have my headphones in listening to music. And if you can just keep bringing yourself back to the moment, even if you know you take 4 steps and as you take those 4 steps, you breathe in. And then your
Mm-hmm.
next 4 steps, you could hold it. Your next 4 steps, you could breathe out. Like keep yourself right in the moment, but like be moving and not necessarily try to be still. And I think if you're also somebody who is more comfortable sitting in feminine energy, sometimes it is easier to be in motion than to be still. That is like a much more masculine form of meditation. And there's nothing wrong
Mhm.
with it if you're able to do that as a woman or as someone who identifies as a woman or, you know, but if you're struggling, it's okay to move. And also, outside of the meditation, she did talk about setting up an artist altar, but setting up any kind of altar, and it doesn't have to be like you don't have to associate it with religion. It could be spiritual, it could be art, it could be something that brings you joy, but just again, it comes back to things that we've spoken into many times with ritual. She talked about like maybe you light a little candle and then you get out your notebook and you start writing in your notebook or whatever, but it all comes down to ritual. If there's a scent you like, maybe you could put on your diffuser, you could burn some incense or, and I think it comes down to making small rituals for yourself and opening yourself up to community. Sometimes maybe you need a little alone time to process. You go for a walk and then you go, I really feel like I need to reach out to so and so and just see how they're doing, or I need to reach out to so and so and say like I'm really struggling. And like we've talked about before, maybe you're not going to get the response you want, or maybe you're going to find this deep support that you truly need.
I'm so glad that you talked about this idea of an altar because, I think my first altar was one card. It was so simple. I had a card that I had pulled at a moon meeting 10 years ago, and I just had this like little area where I kept my Kali card. And it just anchors you into this energy, this ritual, the devotion, your connection to your creativity, your connection to source. And it doesn't have to be religious or complicated. Like so we have piles of acorns sometimes in places where it feels like we're connected. Yeah, we're connected to the natural elements.
I have the acorns right here.
Yeah. And so it's just a really simple way to connect with those deeper parts of self. And I'm glad that you also spoke about being supported by community. And I'm being so deeply supported by free resources. And so I wanted to talk about them here because there's a group called Yoga Farm Ithaca, and a friend told me about it. I signed up for it, and they have this incredible offering of free community events. They're doing community yoga. Um, they have a fantastic program, and it's great. I've been doing that. The guys at Elemental Breathwork have free breathwork once a month. They have this community breathwork. And so there are free resources available that can be deeply supportive. You can connect with like-minded people. And I know that sometimes, especially our content, the message that we're sharing, maybe it doesn't always all the way feel safe in your nervous system because we're talking about things that really go against the grain of a lot of the structures and routines and the way that society perceives reality. And so it might not always feel safe to support us publicly, but any kind of, even if you share our videos with a friend who feels safe, who feels like they might benefit from our message, if you feel like parts of it resonated, anything that you're doing to help us share this message, this deep message of truth and love really helps us. So if you want to like or comment or subscribe, and in the meantime, we'll work on coming up with just even more resources that feel aligned with our community and the way that we want to share our mission.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even have, like a private community that you can join, and we'll try and come up with prices that are accessible and
Mm.
just a place where we can meet and keep the conversation going. Because I know in was it just episode 8 that we talked about success? Whatever episode we spoke about success, you can find it. Um, like even we were sitting in it afterwards and stuff came up for us. So sometimes it's nice, to like just be able to talk about it afterwards. And if it's a private community, that everybody is there is sort of sitting in the same energy and maybe we can start coming together that way. So
Mhm.
our little wheels are spinning, but if you have ideas, if there's things that you want that just you feel like they don't exist, maybe we already know where it does exist. Maybe you didn't know free breath work existed. We're happy to
Mhm.
share that. And we're also, if it feels aligned, happy to start piecing these together, and maybe we're the place where it's going to exist for all of us. So that also feels really nice. So don't be shy, leave a comment. if on Instagram, if you're seeing, stuff on Instagram and you're scared to like, then maybe you can just save it. Never comes up that you saved a post, but it still really helps us out. So,
Yeah, every little bit helps, especially as we start to think of ways that we can support one another.
yeah. So I hope you stuck with us through that little spiel. But yeah, we just want to be able to support you. And sometimes, we're talking about support today and needing to be richly supported. I'm just glancing at my notes here because I wanted to get the wording right. I was going to say deeply, but I knew it was wrong. Being
Yeah,
supported and it goes both ways. It goes both ways. Community comes down to both ways, and there's a lot of trust and there's a lot of stuff to let go to really truly be supported because if you can't trust, you can't be vulnerable and open up. And if you never open up, you can never receive the support that your soul that you really need.
yeah. Thank you so much for listening this week. Next week, we're going to be on the last week of the Artist Way.
Yeah.
And in week 12, I read the little preview and she's talking about like last minute sabotage, which I think is perfect because, the timing in our personal lives, Jen, we're getting ready to step into this really big, scary dream. And so it will be good to sink into this energy of last minute sabotage. So
Yeah.
we'll be back next week talking about week 12, talking about whatever is aligned in the field that's coming up for us. So deeply hope that this serves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Oh gosh, we love all of you so much and are sending you so much love.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week, friends.